This is Illini Isaac here with the Champagne Room live, getting to talk about Illinois' March Madness 2026 matchups. I'm joined by Mike Carpenter, the 200 level, which a lot of you know. Fanboy Carp, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm gonna watch the second half of the Miami, Ohio, and is it SMU game? Yeah. So like that'll
Mm-hmm.
honestly be my first kind of entryway into watching March Madness. I've been oddly detached, and I'm not sure if I'm just kind of like putting on the proverbial cup before we start our own games. But you made a good point before we hopped on here that the timing of tomorrow night's game is kind of perfect because what is it, 8:25, probably 8:30 after a break, and we get the whole day to just enjoy the first round for what it is, and a really advantageous draw, and some breaks with illness and injury, and man, I think maybe when I wake up tomorrow, that sort of urgency will start kind of clicking back into place. And now it's okay, this is win or go home. And what a fortunate bounce for Illinois it feels like this weekend.
Yeah, and I just kind of had a little Twilight Zone because you've obviously invited me onto the 200 level so many times, which was such a blast back when we do those back in the day. So the fact I was like, oh my gosh, I just introed Carp, which is pretty crazy. Um, but yeah, let's get into it.
Cool.
How did you feel initially after? I think for me, I really just wanted to get one game, and in that Big Ten tournament, like I was fine losing to Michigan. And I think beating Wisconsin, since you hadn't beaten a team like that in so long, a team that was going to be in the tournament, it was like, okay, just beat Wisconsin. I don't care if it's close, and then I'll feel a lot better going to the tournament. So the fact that they blew that big lead and really haven't beaten a tournament team since Nebraska February 1st, sort of, where's your head at with this team?
Man, it's I think I used the word detached in the beginning here. And I think part of the reason I said that is if you think about the last 5 or 6 weeks, we haven't had a sort of cathartic or triumphant moment. Your peak was February 1st at Nebraska. And that quality of win does not get taken away, nor does at Purdue. And I know Keaton went off, but you still won the game, and other guys help you close that out. This team has quality wins, but just not in the last 6 weeks. So it is a weird place to be, Isaac, because unlike 2 years ago, where yes, they lost to Purdue at home, but then they smoked Iowa at Iowa. And then we knew the offense was humming. And then they won the Big Ten tournament, and Terrence did what he did. And then we saw the draw you and I did at Poor Brothers right after that Big Ten tournament championship and thought, okay, yeah. And here's what's so weird about this. The draw is better now. And
Mm-hmm.
the excitement is less because I don't think our fan base has had an opportunity in the last month and a half to really get a true reminder of how good this team is. And that Wisconsin loss in the Big Ten tournament was troubling in both the short term and the long term. I think what it did for you and I both as we were texting is it sort of took this idea that these overtime losses were just bad luck and aberrations. And it said, no, it's a trend. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
one. Two, in the short term, it didn't give you, I, or a lot of fans this palate cleanser that I think we were hoping, regardless of what happened against Michigan. Because I presume that matchup was so bad, you would not have won on Saturday, and I didn't need to. I knew beat Wisconsin, punch the 2 seed, on we go. And not only did you lose, but it was the way in which you did that sort of dredged up a lot of, I think, our worst fears about this team. And yet, 6 days later, you get an opportunity to just make all that null and void. And it doesn't matter what the last 5 or 6 weeks, what they look like. So yeah, I it's weird, man. I did my podcast Monday and I didn't have the juice that I should for a 3 seed Illini team. That is an accomplishment. And the Sweet 16 is staring them right in the face. And I know it'll feel good if and when they get that. But it's just sort of right now, this sort of show me phase, which is maybe sounding a little bit entitled as a fan, but we just haven't seen it for a month and a half.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw it as little as a couple years ago when Iowa went on that run, won the Big Ten tournament, lost in the first round. Like you see it both ways a lot of times. I know even a few years ago when Alabama made that run to the Final Four, I think they bounced out of the SEC tournament pretty early. So I think if we hadn't seen the recent struggles of Illinois in March outside of the Elite Eight team, then you might be like, yeah, why not? Like, why can't we turn the corner and get things going now? But just because you've still seen more bad than good from Brad Underwood's teams in March, that's why there's still like such a hiccup. So if you had to put money on it right now, so let me get the realist, because it's been an interesting week, honestly, because I think as Illinois fans, a lot of us are feeling a little bit down on the team, but then you see national media and it's like Illinois is for some reason that team, that 3 or 4 seed that a lot of national guys are picking so they can like sound smarter than everybody else because it's not
Yeah.
like a super hot pick. And not everybody wants to go chalk. So if as a fan, how do you feel how far this team's going to go? And then maybe put your objective hat on and how far do you think they're going to go?
They match
Mm.
Sweet 16 because, and trust me, if there were a tricky looking 6 seed on the other side, let's say Louisville with Mikael Brown, even though he's out for the first weekend, so they're done. So that would have been a good matchup too. But because of that, because of this draw, my head and my gut both say Sweet 16. And what I'm trying to remind myself is I mean, dude, in my life, there are not a lot of Sweet 16 appearances for this program. The March history predates Brad Underwood. I think the recency bias and also the way in which you've lost some of these games, or even I'll go back to the Chattanooga win, which required a Coleman Hawkins block. I mean, that was a win that felt like, oh, like, I mean, I remember, I think you were down here with me and Kenton, right? Watching. It was exhausting, but they got it. They got it. So, my head and heart match in that they will get past this weekend because of the advantageous draw. And I think a question we'll probably broach is like, is that successful? You know, like, does that qualify as a successful season? And that's a really interesting question because historically, of course, but for this season, it gets a little bit more complicated. I think also, it's sort of what lies ahead, presuming that Houston and Florida do what they have to do. Now, I know Florida is technically the easiest of the 1 seeds. However, they were arguably as hot as any of those 1 seeds down the stretch. So I know the metrics don't love them as much as Michigan, Duke, and Arizona. Fine. I know that Houston has just kind of been hovering right there at the 5 spot all year. Maybe a 1 for a little bit. They took a loss or 2 in February, but we know what they are. And they're really good. And they're sort of the antithesis of what a Brad Underwood team is in terms of just being a defensive-minded team and toughness beyond just words being said in a press conference. So you made one more point that I want to hit, though, which is why would Illinois be the sexy pick as the 3 seed? For the life of me, I can't understand it. I really can't. And I think the tricky thing, Isaac, is that a lot of these pundits and prognosticators, they know more about X's and O's in basketball that I will ever know, that you will ever know. And that is what makes a Brad Underwood coach team actually sometimes, especially offensively, really exciting, I'm sure, for them to talk about because they are doing things that are not necessarily common in college basketball to the tune of a number 2, which is still amazing, offense in the country. However, we have seen time and time again, there are the intangible factors that make the difference here. So my reluctance in picking this team past the Sweet 16, it has to do with everything that I've seen the last 5 or 6 weeks and also the March history of Brad Underwood coach teams. I guess to an extent, I understand why they're a sexy pick for the first 2 games. I do not understand any world in which you would pick them to be Houston. But you know what? I still want the chance. And that's why this weekend is sort of, I'm rooting really hard in this sort of pragmatic way because I don't want to have the conversations that would come after losing in the first or second round again in this pod especially. And I just want that extra week to say, okay, well, what if this team were to conjure up what they were doing back in late January, early February?
And what do you think? Because I think losing in the Sweet 16 and losing in the second weekend and then losing how you did a couple years ago in the Elite Eight makes a little bit of a difference, right? I think that team is still going to be remembered fondly forever because you made it to the Elite Eight, which hasn't been done since 2005. But there's a little like sour taste that, oh my gosh, you let UConn go on a 30-0 run. Now that UConn team was generational, what do you think this needs to look like in the Sweet 16? So I think anything less than the Sweet 16, we both would agree is unsuccessful.
Question. What word would you brand it with? Because I don't think that a season in which you matched the highest regular season win
Mm.
total that Brad Underwood's had. And he's had some good regular seasons, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that and sending another dude into the top 10 of the NBA draft, I guess it'd be his first top 10, but another first round pick. Like, I can't look at that as an unsuccessful season in some respects. However, do we bust out the big F word, failure, if they don't? And the tricky thing is, Isaac, I think given what we've seen in March's past, I mean, I know what my YouTube stream chat would look like Sunday morning if that's conversation we're having, and that word would be all over the place. And that is what I'm kind of reckoning with in this sort of protective way, even though I don't anticipate it happening. So if they don't make the Sweet 16, is it a failure? Abject failure, or is that too hyperbolic of a word for this season?
See, going into the tournament, like before Selection Sunday, if we were in like Virginia's spot and we had to play Tennessee as the 6th seed, and it's like, okay, you beat Tennessee earlier in the season. They're playing better basketball than they were earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
They're clearly a good team with another lottery pick. If you lost in a close game to Tennessee in the round of 32, yes, it would be frustrating, but I don't think you would consider it a total failure. But now I think if you do lose before the Sweet 16 now, it would be considered a failure because this team also, we saw their peak for so much longer. Like last year, it was like we saw their peak for like a handful of games, right?
Early January, like the Oregon game at Indiana.
Should have beat Tennessee, like the number 1 team in the country, which I know was you ended up losing. But I think that would have been a little bit more understanding, like if you had a team like Tennessee right there. But since you have this draw that you have and you're getting a UConn team or you're getting a Penn team without their leading scorer, which we haven't even talked about, and then Power is like sick or something, whatever. And then you're either going to get a VCU team that wouldn't have been in the tournament if they didn't win their conference if they didn't win their tournament, and then UNC without Caleb Wilson, who leads them in every statistical category.
Yeah.
I think if you don't make the Sweet 16, it would be considered a failure because of your draw, because of just like a month or so ago, you're on a 12-game win streak. So yeah, I think that anything less than a Sweet 16 in this sense would be a failure too, because look at last year's team. We saw that team had a bunch of flaws. It was a young team all over the place. The year before that obviously went to the Elite Eight. I think you saw what happened last year and you made improvements as a team, as a staff, as a program. You brought a couple guys back like Kylan and Tommy. If you don't get farther than last year's team, I think that would be like a major reevaluation. Like, okay, where did we go wrong?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And then I'm going to flip it and say, okay, I would use the word failure given all those factors, because this is not the conversation we were having February 1st, nor should it have been. This team was cooking. We saw it right in front of us against some really good teams, getting big road wins, and the net ranking was super high, the quad one wins, and then this last 6 weeks, okay, well, overtime loss. I think we both agree the Michigan State one, hey, that's tough, but it happens. Wisconsin, we excused it as being shorthanded, but then they build and build and build, and you were fully healthy against Wisconsin. Didn't matter. Let's flip it, though. And this is where I think this pod is interesting. And despite all my misgivings, that can be erased, because I think this pod gives Illinois the opportunity to get their mojo back. I think these 2 games give them the opportunity against undermanned or just plain out weaker opponents to start feeling good about themselves again. They looked against Wisconsin like, what are you going to do? And I know they wanted to win that game. Wisconsin wanted it more. I mean, that was clear as day for anyone watching that game. To me, that was a team that was kind of, running on fumes. And I just feel like this is such a great 2-game opportunity for them to start remembering what was so exciting about that late January, early February push. And then you set yourself up for the potential upset against Houston, which Vegas would probably say that Illinois-Houston, it's going to be Houston, even in Houston, minus 3.5, 4.5. It's not going to be some like double-digit spread. They're going to say it's going to be a competitive game, so why not make it one? So that's why this is an exciting couple games here, beginning with the Penn game that honestly, with the news today, kind of lost some intrigue. And that's okay with me, man. I will take any break or advantage you can get in March.
Yeah, the line's up to 25.5 now,
Yeah.
which I'd have to look. I think the next closest 3 Michigan State's 16.5, which might be the next. Oh, Gonzaga's 21.5, and then Virginia's 18.5. So you have, by a pretty solid margin, the biggest spread amongst the 3 and the 14s. Um, yeah, so as this a little bit big picture here,
Mhm.
if and I know you've said your piece about Brad Underwood, and most things I
Me?
would yeah,
No, no.
most things I would 100% agree with you on, and I think you've noticed in our text thread, like, a lot of times I tend to lean more on the fan side, like, of your side of things.
Mhm.
Um,
This is
if
why we need Trevor to sort of bang the
yes,
drum
yes.
of, like, detached objectivity. I know I keep using that word, but because of his job, and this is what I'm honestly searching for as I'm pushing 40 years old, Isaac, is how do I just chill out? It's not getting easier. I mean, I thought I was so mature. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm a complete idiot sometimes with it.
No, like, sometimes it is kind of frustrating when I'm, like, wanting to be more like the fan side, like, the
Yeah.
world is falling, and then Trevor's like, "Well, 8 of the 9 top 9 teams lost this week and got upset,"
Right.
whatever, and I'm like, "Okay, so this does happen." But,
Yes, it does.
big picture, what like, as a program, obviously, Underwood's not going anywhere. What is a
Mhm.
program in sort of macro, say we don't make the second weekend, sort of where is your head going as, like, direction that needs to be taken?
Boy, I understand the get as many bites at the apple as you can argument. And for a single elimination tournament, there's so much truth in that. Just get bites at the apple. Eventually, you will break through. And for a lot of coaches, they are the coach that couldn't get the big one until they got the big one. So it happens. I mean, I'll go back to Lou Henson. And I know that was a program building thing in a different era, but really Underwood had to do the same thing right before the NIL took over. He had to build this thing up before that was at least legal. And, it took Lou Henson, I think it would have been his 11th or 12th season when he made the Final Four. Now, he had afforded himself some time because he built it from the ashes and he made the Elite Eight, got screwed in 84 against Kentucky, and fans knew that was a special team, and he had consistent top 15 finishes. So, really, there's a lot of parallels between Henson and Underwood. Here's where I'm at if something were to go awry here, because you're correct. He's not going anywhere. And the objective arguments for keeping him far outweigh any objective argument for getting rid of him. But I think the sort of suffocating feeling that sometimes fans like you or I might feel is, man, will he ever be able to break through? And as I look around at college basketball, there's inherent risk in any possible coaching change. And it wouldn't come from Josh Whitman. You'd be talking about like a premature retirement or something like that. And maybe it would happen. I don't know. But I do think in this day and age, if you've got the resources behind your program, I think the question I would ask Illini fans is this: do you trust Josh Whitman? Let's say they bow out early again. The question I would ask is, do you trust Josh Whitman to go find the guy to take the next step more than you do Brad Underwood to get there himself? In essence, who do you trust more? Josh Whitman to make the next hire. Basically, as a Yankees fan, I remember Buck Showalter getting them back into the playoffs in 95. That wasn't enough. They go out, get Joe Torre. They win 4 out of 5. But it can work in reverse. I understand the risk and the fear in some cases of any idea of a Brad Underwood-less Illini program. But I've also lived long enough to see other coaches be successful. So I don't want Illini fans to be outside of the oven with pitchforks if they don't make the Sweet 16 saying, fire Brad Underwood, because that ain't going to happen and that ain't productive. But I don't want them to fall prey to this idea that if they fall short again, well, get another bite at the apple, because eventually those bites do run out. And it might just be the case where the guy you have in there is either not taking big enough bites out of the apple or he ain't going to get you to the core. And weak analogy, but I think it's so tough, Isaac, because you and I both know, like, we're talking about a 3-seed Illini team that will likely make the Sweet 16. You and I don't take that for granted. And yet, I think this NIL, basically professional basketball era, and never keeping the same roster and just all the transition, all that, it just has made it, I think, more difficult to fall into what I would have done in the 90s, or even Lon Kruger, if he would have stuck around, to say, well, it's fine. Just keep going with fine. Because he raised the bar, and with the bar being raised, so too did our level of disappointment when they don't make that next step. That's fandom, though. You find any professional or college sports team fandom, they will say the same thing. Whether it is right or wrong, I will leave that to others to decide.
It really is like it's been a interesting time to be a fan because I've always been college first. Now I follow like all sports, but slowly becoming and getting more of that like professional mindset. And then
Yeah.
you look at all these teams like I don't know why the Pittsburgh Steelers came to mind. They won a Super Bowl way back when, and then they've eventually Mike Tomlin and them just got to a point where it's like, yeah, cool, it bites at the apple, but you're not going anywhere. And it's almost more, and I know we're still far away from this as a program, but it's almost more harmful to stay in that loop because you're not getting, new draft picks. Like you're constantly like, well, we're close, but we're still not getting to the Super Bowl. And it's almost more dangerous to be there than to lose a lot of games and kind of be like, hey, we need a fresh start, get a new draft pick, that sort of thing. And I think that kind of translates even to like Illinois' situation is like after a while, how many years of that do you have to like experience before you're like, okay, this needs like a fresh rebuild and just a whole new face. And I know we're probably still not close to that point, but
No, no.
as college sports have become more like professional sports, I've had a lot of those with analogies floating through my brain.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I think there is this weird dissonance between these discussions, which would have made, I think, more sense 10 years ago, as I said, just with the changing landscape. But at the same time, Brad Underwood's navigated that landscape very well and actually been pretty, if not revolutionary, very quick to say, well, Europe has plenty of talent. Just go there and get some like 19, 20-year-old pro guys. And that has been beneficial, despite what people want to say. Well, I wish we had more Americans on the team. Well, I like Merkovich, okay? I'll take him. I'll take a KJ despite his erratic play down the stretch. I'll take those guys. I think the big thing, Isaac, is, as fans, this is what you and I do that maybe an X's and O's expert won't have. We do mix the head and the gut. And the X's and O's guys will go with the head, as they should, because that is the logical part of our brain. And we're going with both logic and emotion. And you and I both know that some of these losses have felt a certain way that they haven't sat right. And I think what there is a disconnect between the vision of the program that Brad Underwood wants to run and the actual on-court results. And that stems from everything from the style of play, which is, you and I both know, not that tough. They ain't that tough. You're talented, you're finesse. That's fine. Teams like that can win championships. But I don't need to be sold this idea that we're the 89 Pistons and that we're going out there and kicking everybody's butt in the parking lot behind, I guess in the case of Detroit, Michigan, a Hungry Howie's, but in our case, a Pizza Hut. So I do think that has made this such a weird dynamic where, coupled with the ever-changing rosters, which is the case most places, but certainly here with Underwood as well, that it's been harder to emotionally latch onto it. And I want to make one more argument here too. I also think that we're maybe dealing with, I say we, I can only speak for myself, this shelf life notion. In other words, the familiarity that you get with a coach, that can be a beautiful thing. You ask any Michigan State fan, if Tom Izzo lived to be 100 years old and coached till 100, they'd take that. That is exceedingly rare. Professional, collegiate, and now collegiate becoming more professional. There is this sort of, all right, what's in the box? Like if you're on a game show, you got the Camaro over here and you got the mystery box. I know there's risk involved in the box, but I don't know, after 9 or 10 years, maybe I want to see what's in that box and see if it's a little bit better. It might not be. That's the risk. But yeah, that's what makes this weekend particularly interesting. And I do think, despite all our frustrations the last 5 or 6 weeks, they will respond starting with tomorrow, and they will get the win on Saturday against VCU or UNC, both because of matchup. And I do think there will be enough oomph to get them through. I hope to God that's the case. But it would be a really tricky and honestly kind of bummer conversation that inevitably would happen if they don't.
Yeah, and we don't have to hit on this any longer, but there's something that has popped into my head a lot recently. And again, college basketball is way different than it was like even since I was a kid, since you've been following along. But somebody that I know we've maybe talked about. So this is Matt Painter.
Yeah.
Again, basketball was way different when Matt Painter started coaching. And yes, he's had more success recently, but I do not remember Matt Painter getting obliterated like he should have probably for like his early years.
Look at the early teens.
Yeah, exactly. He had such a rough stretch here, and then losing in the first round, or yeah, losing to Fairleigh Dickinson. And again, these are all mixed in with like some impressive seasons, but really 2005 to 2014, they made two Sweet 16s and got bounced before that, made the CBI and then didn't make anything. First round, but like, in one thing I remember too about a lot of those teams that they underachieved. Like, I know that looks like a lot of like Sweet 16s and stuff like that, but they
Well,
all like a lot of those teams were projected to go to the Final Four.
you know what I think might have saved him? I think Robbie Hummel's injury in a roundabout way
Mm,
did,
mm,
because everyone knows that if he doesn't get injured, they're doing more than that with him, Jawan Johnson, Etwan Moore.
mhm.
I think Lewis Jackson, a point guard. I mean, like that team was loaded, and Robbie Hummel just couldn't stay healthy. So you get two Sweet 16 appearances with those teams. You look at 13 and 14. I see it. I talked about it on my podcast. It took him until year, what was that, 16 to make the Final Four
Painter so he started in 2005 and then made the Final Four
in 24.
2023.
18
Yeah,
years.
23, 24. Yeah, when they lost to UConn.
But that being said, Isaac, I remember when they hired Bruce Weber, who was under Gene Cady, and this is on the heels of Bill Self, and I said, I don't want to be Purdue. So I understand your point, because yeah, Matt Painter is known as a great coach, and his record would bear that out. I mean, it's pretty gaudy when you look at it, and he might be in conversations for the Naismith Hall of Fame. So it does show these conversations there's so much gray areas. I do think, though, I don't want Illini fans that if they're feeling a certain way to feel like that influenced by fans or pundits from outside the area. There's this old notion that I used to listen to or hear about on 670 The Score that Boers and Bernstein coined, and it was out of town stupid. And the idea is that people that are not like boots on the ground, like going to the games or kind of seeing with their own eyes and feeling in their gut what's going on, that of course they're going to look at certain things and say, are you crazy? But you know what? I might have felt that way about like UK fans with John Calipari, but eventually that ran its course, and that guy won a freaking title. So it's funny, man, because that is both the fun and the aggravation of sports. I mean, it's so emotional, and all of us are going to be feeling a certain way tomorrow and into Saturday. I mean, hopefully, I think I'm pretty confident they will, and then hopefully into next week. But these sort of conversations persist because I do think that we all have a myriad of reasons why we're either like pro keep Brad for another 10 years, or man, if he doesn't do this or that, I might want to see something different at some point. The thing to temper all that conversation is twofold. One of which is the fact that he continues to get a level of talent that eventually, yeah, I could see them breaking through in spite of whatever coaching misgivings we have. I could see that. And the fact that you just don't get rid of a dude that makes every single tournament. This would have been 7 in a row if not for COVID. And I have no doubt that whatever happens this offseason, he's going to make it again next year. So even if you ask me, proverbial gun to the head, would you? I don't know. What's my other option? Is it Nate Oates? Okay, sure. But if it's not Nate Oates, I don't know. So it's so weird, man. I mean, I don't know about you. I've been waffling with it just because this last 5 or 6 weeks, in full transparency to you, has dredged up all the uh-ohs and here we go agains of March past. And it's been a 6-week like, ugh, are we doing this again? Because I thought this team was different. We all did, and they might still be, but poof.
Yeah, it's almost like the Elite Eight team sort of took a little bit of pressure.
Yes.
Like, it's almost like you were underwater, you're able to get a little breath of air, but now it's still kind of like you're struggling, you're drowning a little bit. And drowning might be a little bit excessive, but and then last year happens and it's like, man, you had a decent path like
He had a
to a second
great
weekend to
path,
get like
dude.
I think you need to see like we need to see more of which again, a lot of teams don't do this. This is hard, but like outperforming what people are projecting you to do in the tournament. Like you need to get some of those wins. Like if you make the second weekend and you beat Houston, then like I think that like we should come back on here and say like, okay, that outdoes some of like
Mhm.
the underperforming games. Um, but yeah, I think making the second weekend would go a long way this weekend because it's like, okay, you're supposed to. Don't come out tight. It'll be I mean, you have no business with this first game being close, and then I'm just really hoping that on Saturday you're not coming out like you did against Chattanooga, against Houston a few years ago, and then
Yeah.
against Loyola before that, where it's like you just knew like 5 minutes in, like something's wrong with this team. So vibes are gonna go a long way the first few minutes of the game tomorrow and
Yes.
Saturday.
And, you know, it's well, they do and they don't sometimes, because I thought the Wisconsin game, the vibes were great
Yep.
until they weren't. I thought, "Oh, okay, so we're gonna have Nick Boyd just yapping all game." Fine, dude, yap for 40 minutes. Well, he did, but then you withstood it with 2 15-point leads in each half, and I thought, wow, now that is a very businesslike, mature approach from Illinois. They didn't get sucked into it. Yes, there was the technical on Kylan, but man, they weren't able to sustain whatever level they had in Wisconsin. Somehow was able to conjure back that intensity that they had early on. You know, it's interesting too, Isaac, because I think that yes, dude, if they get the Sweet 16, they beat a Houston, and then take your shot against Florida. As long as you don't give up a 30-0 run, none of us are going to be sitting here saying, he didn't make a Final Four.
Mhm.
That's how the
Mhm.
cookie crumbles. I think there
Mhm.
is an understanding with most Illini fans that, okay, yeah, tough draw. Houston in 2022, that game sucked. However, were there that many people after that game saying, man, Brad Underwood underachieved yet again?
Mm-mm.
No, because
Yeah.
they were better than you, and you just won a banner in the Big Ten. So it's this constant, like in Mortal Kombat, if you're fighting a scorpion against Sub Zero or something, you got the health meter. And I think every fan has a health meter with their team. And when you accomplish certain things, it fills back up. And then when you don't or you underachieve, it starts just dissipating. You're getting little punches, right? Brad is so far from any sort of like finish him move in Mortal Kombat. He just is. But I do think that what makes this a really, you know, what makes this feel that much more consequential is all the past. You mentioned Chattanooga. That was a win, didn't feel like it. You mentioned Loyola. Well, that's obviously the big albatross still to this day. 5 years later, it still is. And I'll even go with Arkansas, a team that
Mhm.
did not care to play. They
That
didn't show
team
up.
was just that whole year was just a wash
Do you
almost.
remember Matthew Meyer losing his shoe and he just played without a shoe for about 90 seconds? Pick up your shoe.
Yeah, I remember I was thinking about that season a couple days ago, like, remember I was at the Northwestern game at home, you were down 18, I think, at halftime and came back and won.
Oh yeah.
Um, there was another Michigan State punked you.
You did beat Michigan
You
the
beat
last game of
Michigan
the
in
year in overtime.
overtime, but Michigan was not good that year, they shouldn't have taken you
Juwan,
to
yeah.
overtime.
Yeah. I miss
But
him.
yeah, no, I know. I think and I said this in the chat thread, and then I got a couple more quick ones for you, but
Yeah.
I think this team probably isn't which the interesting thing too is that when this team looked at their peak, you weren't even fully healthy and like fully together. And then so it's almost like you got fully healthy for the most part, but then kind of Keaton started to slip and it's just like it messed up the flow of things. But I think this team is maybe below what they showed in that 12-game win streak, but I
Mhm.
think they're definitely above what they've shown recently.
For sure.
And if you find that like kind of middle ground, then you should easily make the second weekend and put up a fight against Houston, which I can't complain because you've only made so many second weekends in my lifetime and in Illinois history. So in 2 days or 3 days from now, whatever that is, after the round of 32 game, if we win, what do you think we'll be talking about? And if we lose, I think it's obvious what we'll be talking about. But what do you think will be the cause of that loss? So win
Sure.
and loss, sort of both ends of it.
Well, if they win, I think we'll just be saying, "Hey, okay, if not quite mission accomplished, That's impressive, regardless of opponent, to withstand that 5 or 6 week slump and all those close losses. And then when it came down to it, you said, enough, enough. And that would be credit to Brad and the coaches. That would be credit to the players for their players only meeting the Kylan held, which, listen, we can say, yeah, whatever. But I don't know. It says something. And I will take something for a team that I think has kind of been coasting for the better part of 2 months. So I think that the narrative, if they just get it done, is more than just, well, that's what they should have done. It's okay. That's maturity. That's showing that you are, in fact, one of the top 16 teams, as we knew they've been all year from the start, and that you belong there. And then you take your shot against Houston. And I want a week. This is the best part of March, Isaac, is when your team advances to the next week, is that 5 or 6 days where you get to just, okay, yeah, Thursday night. I mean, I remember before the Iowa State game, I felt cool as a cucumber going into that. Like, I just said, hey, we got another game. And there's only 15 other teams that can say that. So that's what I'm hoping for. Dude, if they lose, it's DEFCON 1. It just is. And I say that knowing nothing's going to happen, and nor should anything necessarily happen. But there is going to be an added sort of angst. I was at the Illinois-Michigan game, understanding Michigan's a national title contender. Walking out of that stadium, and my dad was using the restroom by the main entrance of the way out, and I'm observing people just filter out. And just sort of this like, I knew it. This sort of like resigned to the fate sort of thing. Like, that's Illinois. And dude, I'm a Bears fan. I have too much fandom in other teams to think that's so Illinois. Like, I don't want to spend the mental energy of thinking that's so Illinois, because I don't believe in hexes, superstitions, any of that crap. You either are better or you aren't. And luck does come into play sometimes. So I just worry that if they were to lose this weekend, no matter how it happens, buzzer beater, I don't care, that it would change the discourse almost across the board, with the exceptions being, again, people are just like, well, they had the number 2 offensive efficiency. Yeah, well, what did it matter? You know, like, in other words, it's just going to turn into put up or shut up. And then the offseason fun of acquiring a new roster and all that becomes a little less fun, because it's like, well, no matter who they get, are we just going to end right back up here in March with another disappointment? And that stuff, there's a snowball effect to it. It kind of has this sort of like damaging effect, I think, to the psyche of the fan base. And then I've seen it with football, but Brett Bielema has done a good job of turning it around at Memorial Stadium. This almost like self-fulfilling prophecy that in the fourth quarter, if something bad happens, oh no, I don't want that to happen to basketball too. And maybe it's already kind of it's kind of already there through my lifetime, because they've had plenty of disappointments, but they've had enough success where most of the time you go over there, even with Brad Underwood, I'm still like, oh yeah, big game. Come on. They're going to win the home game. Even if they don't, you start seeing that shift, and you start seeing this sort of pessimism on a wider scale than just the 200 level, which I'd like to think I'm more skeptical than pessimistic, but I know I've crossed that line sometimes, and against my will, but it's just spilling out of me sometimes after certain losses just sting and feel a certain way.
Yeah, this program definitely knows how to, which again, somebody that's like a West Virginia fan or something would be like, oh, cry me a river.
Yeah.
But it definitely knows how to play with your emotions, kind of like, oh, you're roped back in, like we're past this March drama where we can't win. And then, Loyola happens. And then, okay, now you get to the Elite Eight. Oh, now you lose last year when you shouldn't have. Like, it's crazy. The next 48, 72 hours, like how much they could impact the next 6, 8, 9 months, like until the next season starts and we find out who's going to be on the team and stuff like that.
They're going to win. They're going to win, though. I mean, let's be clear. Like, they are going to win, because I said this 2 years ago before Kansas came here for that football game. And that whole week I was like, I don't got a lot of analysis for you. Illinois is going to win. They have to. That's all I got for you. There's no other choice. There is no other choice. And I do think that even if the team right now doesn't feel the weight of all of our March disappointments, they feel the weight of these last 5 or 6 weeks. I would imagine that'd be human nature. And maybe there is a silver lining in losing that Wisconsin game the way that you did. for them to just say, whoa, okay. It
Mhm.
wasn't just about injuries or illness. It wasn't just about getting everybody back into the fold when Kylan and Stojakovic came back. It was, there's something wrong here. And this is it. So I would love to see that disappointment turned into a galvanizing moment. We've been waiting for that. And I've been waiting for Brad to just stop. God dang it, man. Even today asked about these close losses. Well, it was something different in each case. I don't know, Brad. I found a few consistent threads in each one of them. Hopefully let me rephrase that. Hopefully the players have learned. God, I'm sorry, Isaac. I was feeling good for a second. I remember that quote. And this is why Trevor says, don't listen to press
Yeah.
conferences. But did you see the quote I'm talking about?
No, I don't think I might have, but I've kind of like grown to just brush over him because coach speak is so that's just Brad's
Well,
language.
hey, and in fairness to him, it could have just been, this all depends on tone, right? It
Mhm.
could have been, the idea is, no, 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 no. Every single one of those games, it's been 5 or 6 different things. The way that I read it seemed to be like, well, in one game it was rebounding, in another game it was shot making. So here's the thing. He might have been saying in totality, we did way too many bad things in each of those games, hence we lost all these overtime games. I'd initially read it as, oh, well, maybe in that Wisconsin game we were shorthanded, and then that one it was rebounding, and this one,
Mhm.
So this is a sign, Isaac. This is why I gotta chill out. I gotta
I
chill out, man.
Yeah, no, and I think Illinois I saw something that Illinois ranks like crazy unlucky in the unlucky metric,
Yes,
whatever that measures.
whatever that means, but they do.
Yeah, like, I would say, though, if you watch with your eyes, I know the stats are gonna say, "Okay, so we're 0-4 in overtime, and then Nebraska beat us on a three-point buzzer beater," which I think about, like, 2 or 3 of those games, I'm like, "Yeah, we lost in overtime," but, like, UCLA, we had no business going into overtime. Like,
Most
this
of these games you didn't. I think
you
the
shoulda won, like,
exception.
4 of them, like, probably. Like, 4 of the 5 overtime and buzzer beating losses, you shoulda won.
If you win one of them, you're a 2 seed in St. Louis.
Yeah.
One of them. But here's the thing. I think that we would both excuse the Michigan State one, right? I know you were up 8 early in the second half.
You were due to lose.
You were due to lose. You were shorthanded without Kylan, and that was the worst possible matchup to not have Kylan.
And that was
Okay.
Keaton's worst game of the year.
Yeah. And man, I mean, you almost still won.
Yeah.
This is why so this is why I understand why some pundits say, well, if they put it all together. I think the reason that we're skeptical is we just haven't seen them do that. And you make a point too about these losses. You know, too many of these overtime games you shouldn't have been in overtime.
Mhm.
The last 3 overtime games did not need to go overtime. And when it went overtime Friday, this sounds so cynical, man. I thought, dude, at this point, just lose and rest your legs.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not, I, you know, cut off your nose to spite your face, essentially. You really want another 40 minutes with Michigan after playing 45 against Wisconsin when you got to get ready for maybe Thursday, and that's where, why put yourself in that position? And listen, bad luck, it happens. But you and I watch those games. Wisconsin going off in 2 straight games was not luck. They were not making 3 after 3 against Illinois in Chicago. That was not about the 3-point shot. That was about not stopping them getting to the rim over and over again. Same things goes for UCLA. I mean, they shot pretty darn well and you went ice cold, but that was a 30 minutes from hell, which sent you into overtime. And by the skin of your teeth, it should have been a Keaton Wagler moment until it wasn't. That's the thing, man. I mean, this is where I understand a record and the most wins in the Big Ten the last 7 years. People say, oh, come on, are you crazy? Isaac, what would happen if you went to one of your Michigan friends after they make the Final Four this year and you say, yeah, but we have the most Big Ten wins in the last 7 years? What would they do?
Oh, they don't care at all. I mean, they like even to a Michigan fan, you could be like, well, until this year, we haven't lost in like 9 games or we haven't lost in like
Yeah, they don't
8
care.
years, whatever. No, they don't care. And it is like it is such it's like a cognitive dissonance thing because it's like, yes, you've won all these regular season games, but and I was looking at that today, like looking and thinking about like some of these other Big Ten teams. What it basically means is that Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, they've all had the last 7 or 8 years, they've all had a really down year, and you haven't. Like
Right.
Purdue had, a really down year. I think it might have been COVID year. Michigan a couple years ago
They
was
did, yeah.
awful. Michigan State had a couple had a almost 500 year, but they still made the tournament. And you just haven't had that. So, but then those teams like Michigan has obviously had more postseason success than you, more Big Ten, like they have more Big Ten titles than you. They just don't have those random regular season wins.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's cool. It is nice. And like 10 years ago or 8 years ago, whenever Brad came, if he would have been like, oh, you're going to win the most Big Ten games of any school, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is,
Yes.
yeah, I'd
Sign the
win
dotted
heaven.
line. And that's not without tangible rewards too. I know it's one Big Ten regular season title, but I think in all fairness, it really should be a second banner up there, if not for the weird COVID rules. And I know Josh signed off on that, but then also the 2 Big Ten tournament titles. So it's not about conference play. Never has been about conference play. It's about March. And I remember distinctly back in 93.5, Jeremy would talk about, Big Ten championships are undervalued. I mean, it's a single elimination tournament. That's what matters the most. And I do agree with that. But I think at a certain point, Isaac, it's just put up or shut up time. There have been, if you really think about it, Loyola was not a great draw. Fine. They probably should have been a 4 or 5 seed, but they were a caliber team. You would have played at least in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, you have to beat good teams eventually. So
you have to beat good teams eventually. And if you're going to lose to them, don't lose by looking awful for 40 straight minutes.
Yes.
You go to the Chattanooga game, 4 versus 13. Whew. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll move on from that one. And then you go down the line and you continue to see this recurring pattern all the way to Kentucky last year, where you were favored, I'm pretty sure, going into that game.
It was really close, but you might have been, yeah.
And it might as well have been you're a 10 seed playing a 2.
Yeah.
And that's not what it was. So eventually I need to see tangible proof that lined up against random crap like they're going to face this week. I'm sorry. Like Hubert Davis, I know that guy made a national title game. Hubert Davis. Come on. I know there's luck involved. I know it's hard. It ain't that hard. Illinois historically has made it hard. Brad Underwood has made it harder than it needs to be. Make the Sweet 16. Take your shot. I think they will. And then if this is a confidence building weekend, then it does get interesting in Houston. And I think I like this team, honestly, Isaac, better away from home than at home. I'm glad they aren't in St. Louis. I'm glad at Houston it might be a tough crowd because I don't want them playing in front of a bunch of orange because for some reason that actually seems to be, if not a detriment, it's not helping them that much. So reset button, get out of here. Go play elsewhere. And that's what they're going to have the opportunity to do.
It's also weird because even though like you lost at UCLA, it's not like that was an insane crowd. Like I would. It's like the toughest crowds you've played in this year. You've played really well for the most part.
Iowa, Purdue, Nebraska.
Even at the Breslin, you played well. Like, yeah.
Get out of here. There's something
you
about
played Tennessee and Nashville.
Yes. There's something about this team or even bragging rights because that would have been a split environment. So at least it was like intense. There's something about these like half-empty gyms where I know Illinois fans travel and God bless them for it. That is one of the cool things about having an alumni base like this. But I really have always enjoyed watching Brad's teams more away from home than at home.
Yeah,
I just have because I know they still have a higher winning percentage at home. That's just the way the cookie's going to crumble. But they seem to just be looser in a good way when they're away from home. So when in a weird way, dude, if you backed into Greenville, South Carolina, because you couldn't beat Wisconsin and you got an extra day's rest, so be it. So be it.
Yeah. And again, that's the beautiful and painful thing of March. Like in a few days or like a week from now, if we beat Houston, it's like, who the heck cares that we lost, those embarrassing games. The last thing I wanted to ask you, because I've kind of had interesting thoughts about this today. I saw this on Twitter. And I've been one of the biggest Keaton Wagler fans all year.
The man.
He's been insane. Now he has slipped a little bit. His numbers don't totally look like it, but just the eyeball
efficiency.
Yeah, efficiency definitely. Mostly with like the turnovers and the 3-point shot. I feel like it's the most noticeable. But Keaton did qualify technically, I think, according to the DIA standards of getting your jersey in the rafters. How this is an interesting one because the past few years, right? It's like those guys were here multiple years. They had deep March runs. Is it really as simple as Keaton needs to, because like if say for some reason Will Riley got like snuck into a second team All American last year,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna like if I see his name in the rafters, I'm gonna be like, oh, that's cool. Like, because he's probably doing great things in the NBA now. But it's so much different than like the meaning of like the Io, the Kofi, the Terrence, the obviously Darren and D. What are your thoughts and your reactions to Keaton's jersey being up in the rafters? Most likely.
I think you reward greatness, and I
Mm,
don't think you should ever shy away from that. It's tricky though because dude, I love like how can you not love Keaton Wagler? I know he's been laboring more the last month or so than he was earlier. It seems so easy, and then until all of a sudden it wasn't. And I'm sure fatigue plays a factor, but you know, I'm old and I'm old enough to remember when you would get a freshman in and then they'd go all the way through junior year if they were really good, like a Darren Williams, or all the way through their senior if they weren't an NBA guy. And that sort of emotional connection you build with it. If Keaton Wagler, let's say they make the Sweet 16, lose to Houston, and then the debate is, well, he qualifies. Should we put him up in the rafters? I don't have a good answer for you, only because I see arguments for both. The argument for would be that as you're building your program and you continue to attract top talent, you say, we reward greatness. So come here, be an All-American. We'll get you a top 10 draft pick. You'll get your jersey in the rafters. That's a good sell. It does matter. It's tangible. Like you accomplish something, here's a reward. From a fan's perspective, it's a bit weird because I hardly got to know you.
mhm.
It was a lot of fun, and I'll never forget the 46 points at Purdue and that, basically 2-month stretch where you were just unbelievable. And that's not to say he got bad. He's not. He's still really good, but it's just only relative to what he was doing before. Does it feel more like a bit of a struggle for him? But yeah, it's tough, man. I don't have a good answer for that because I waffle back and forth and think, well, reward it. But on the other hand, I'm not going to look up at that with the same sort of, yes, as I would. I mean, I'm thinking about, here's the name, Kawan Garris.
Mm.
And that's before your time, but in the early 90s, he was at the tail end of the Deion Thomas era and just a 4-year starter point guard. Just, the most reliable star point guard that you could have. Not a lot of March success. Doesn't have his jersey up in the rafters. I get it because he didn't hit those qualifiers, but I know that emotionally I have much more of a connection with him because of that. But I also don't want to be a dinosaur and not recognize that this is a different era and that just because it's a different era, we shouldn't reward those, even if it was just a year. So it's tough, man. What does it really matter? I don't know, but I mean, I think it still does matter. So that's why these decisions are for like an athletic director to make. And I'm sure Brad Underwood would have a say. I think if he makes a Final Four, there's no questions asked. I mean, duh.
Yeah, I don't think there's like necessarily a right or wrong answer unless you are for some reason like dying on the hill of like it's unacceptable he can't get his jersey up there. But I think it's one of those things too. And I know I keep saying this, but March is so important. Like if he say this team goes on a run, yeah, and he hits a big shot in 10 years, we're gonna like look back and be like, oh my gosh, like loved that Keaton Wagler season. And this feels more like a thing too. Like Keaton's most likely going to get drafted like top 10. Like in 10 years, you're going to be like, oh, is that the Keaton? Like kids, and other people are going to be like, oh, is that the Keaton Wagler that's on like the Bulls now or whatever? Like it's going to
Yeah.
be more one of those things than like, oh my gosh, remember the hard, tough sweat, blood, tears, everything he shed at Illinois. And at least he seems like a great kid, like
No doubt.
loves basketball. He's like here obviously for the right reasons. It seems like which that's an easy guy to root for. Yeah, that was just an interesting thought I had today because it's so much different than any of the other recent jerseys that have been put up there.
Hey, I mean, Terrence is 2 years. So what's the difference? I guess that's a fair question. A transfer in, he wasn't even a high school recruit for you. But, first team All-American, right? Big Ten tournament championship, absolutely dominant weekend that helped you raise a banner. Elite Eight, your deepest run in the tournament. I don't know. I mean, there are more tangible accomplishments in those 2 years that he had than Keaton would have won. But this is why this is still an exciting time of year because I had a thought back in like late November, early December when Keaton might have had his first like whoa game,
Mhm.
and thinking, man, what if we just have like a Carmelo thing, just a Carmelo kind of run where one dude just goes off. And in my bones, I don't feel that happening because there seems to be heavy feet, kind of limp legs. Like he just seems the fatigue I worry is a part of this. But if he conjured that up, he'll be the best player on the court every night. And then hopefully match like a Kingston Flamings who, maybe Kylan could nullify him just a little bit at least to make that a really interesting game. But uh, love the kid. He's a great story. He's an amazing evaluation from the staff. I mean, that if not saved your season,
Mm.
makes me think I don't want to imagine a world without Keaton Wagler on this team. They knew he'd be good. They just could not have expected this. And thank goodness, because it's just been a joy to watch this dude play the way he has. And I have no doubt he's going to be a successful pro because he's got all the makeup, all the intangible qualities that it takes, beyond the skill itself to make a really good pro basketball player. He seems to embody that.
Well, we just went almost an hour,
Yeah, we
and
tend to do that.
hopefully this podcast lasts longer than 24 hours or so, because Illinois plays in about less than
Yeah.
23 hours.
It'll be, I don't know, the 12-minute timeout maybe in the second half, 24 hours from now?
So. Hopefully, hopefully it cruises along, and I'll be interested to see what commercial gets really annoying this tournament, because I haven't watched enough of like the past couple nights to see which, like if it's like a Progressive commercial or if it's Liberty Mutual or whatever.
I've turned around on Liberty Mutual.
Okay.
If the emu is involved, at least. There is this one Liberty Biberty advertisement with a couple.
Yeah,
I don't understand that.
No.
If the emu's in it after being in Nashville and winning the Music City Bowl and seeing the cute emu mascot, I've turned on the emu. Progressive, not so much.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, Liberty Mutual obviously makes me think of the bowl game now, so that definitely is a plus for them. But
I know what it'll be. It'll be Samuel Jackson, Charles Barkley, Spike Lee. Is it Chase or City? It's a credit card thing.
Capital One.
Capital One card. That'll be it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll have something of them doing something crazy. Or who's the movie lady too? Jennifer Gardner. She's always in it too.
Oh yeah, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. For my own sanity during these games, like when I'm watching it, when Illinois is involved in an NCAA tournament game, I am just like either I'm walking into the other room or I'm not just sitting on the couch during these timeout breaks. I can't do that. We will be in the garage. We're going to try to give all the good positive juju that we can in the garage, and the weather's cooperating for that. So, hey man, it's time. I feel bad. I hope that I wasn't somewhat blanket. I would understand if I was, but it is a weird place to be in coming to this because you've accomplished enough to have expectations. We have expectations for this weekend, but we also have these concerns that we hope get addressed affirmatively. And I think for these two games, they will. And I don't care if it's by a point. I don't. Just win the stupid games. I imagine tomorrow won't be much of a problem. And then VCU or UNC, I'm sorry. This team did pretty good against not so great teams this year. And you're kind of bordering on that even in the second round matchup.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something Illinois fans can hang their hat on. Well, Carp, are you doing? So you said you're doing the garage, and I think I heard you say, you're not doing live reactions or anything, right? You're gonna wait.
They aren't evergreen enough. I'm not at my most cogent, or my thoughts are so much more reactive than reflective, and I've kind of abandoned that. I think going forward, and the numbers bear that out, and also my own sanity bears that out. So Friday, it's still my spring break. So Friday morning, after whatever happens tomorrow night, I'll just pop down, do a podcast about that, and hopefully preview whatever happens. And what I do kind of enjoy the fact that we'll get VCU, UNC beforehand, so we can get kind of a scout and just say, well, this team, that team. Not that our scouts matter, but it is kind of nice to get a look ahead to whatever team you'd face. Just sort of like when Duquesne sprung the upset on BYU, and you said, well, there it is. It's right there for you.
Yeah, well, thanks again for hopping on. This was a blast. It's
absolutely
again, it's like kind of a Twilight Zone thing, having you on this show and all that stuff. So great stuff. If you don't follow Mike at the 200 level, go ahead and give him a follow. And yeah, we'll hopefully do this again sometime soon.
Sounds good, man. Anytime. Appreciate it, Isaac.